Well, I was born 91 years ago, so I'm not with the technology of today. So if you lose me there, I shout very loud. Okay, because this is a seed festival, I got very inspired last night. I am about seed, believe me. I have 7 children. So my daughters Victoria and Suzanne are here with me today. But I would like to give you blessing, a blessing of our people, how we greet people. And I was taught this as a child from my grandmother. Buenos días, Día de Dios. May your Creator give you a good day. And it was very important in our culture, like the herbs and the plants, and the respect of seed especially. So I'm going to begin this talk with a little poem I wrote last night. Grandma gave me a special coffee can that was full of different things, broken jewelry and faded old rings, old buttons and beads. I found some string and put on the buttons and beads. There were 2 little paper packages with flat little seeds. I asked her if I could plant them, and she said, yes, indeed. I planted, I tended, I water almost every day. A plant appeared in the month of May. Today the hollyhocks are all over the yard. They are beautiful colors, and I pick and arrange, and I make special cards. So I wrote that for you today. So we have a lot of charts because I really don't belong to the technology. I don't do computers. I barely use the cell phone and hang up on people. But I can talk very well. The brain still functions. I was born in Alamosa at home 91 years ago, and that house is still there. And but I have when during the war we moved to Pueblo, and later to California. So I was here, there, and everywhere. But in 1974, we came back to San Luis, Colorado. It's the oldest establishment in Colorado. And naturally, I live in my grandmother's 103-year-old 2-story adobe house. It still has the call of Grandma. Grandma had little things everywhere. And sometimes I still find something of her remembrance because it's an adobe house. And one of the things that Grandma had was a little kitchen window, and she was a tiny woman. So they made the windows very low in the house. My uncle was the carpenter. And one of the things that she always had were old, she recycled. She was the first recycler. She recycled everything, believe me. We treated water like it was gold. If you drank water and left a little bit, she'd tell, go put it in the little plant in the window. That's how precious water, and we got to remember that precious thing right now. And if she mopped the floor, she had a ditch that went to the outhouse, and that was no fun. But the important thing is that she believed in taking care of the plants because my father, Raimundo Gallegos, was a farmer. He had acreage out of San Luis, and we grew all our own food, most of our food, and we shared with other people. But Grandma had a window with all the herbs. You might find manzanilla, which was chamomile. You might find romero or rosemary, but rosemary wasn't a wild thing. sometimes the ships came in through Mexico and brought seed that we European seed. So I think a lot of this, it became runaway seed and got in people's yards, and that's why it's in Costilla County. But she always had mint for your stomach, mint for other things. She always had chamomile. She had things that were wild also, but mostly that was in the yard. And I have listed some of the things we used and still use. Today, one of the herbs that the Hispanic culture uses is I make a tincture out of it. It's called osha. We have osha de la sierra, osha del campo. The osha de la sierra is the little root, very expensive to buy in an herb store, and it's being protected. A few years ago, the Kansas University, we went up to a certain area in New Mexico to make sure it was being protected, that the roots aren't taken out selfishly. We have to be very careful about that because we got to treat a root and the seed like gold. I'm not supposed to say because you'd be up there picking. Okay, but the point is we're protected. But in San Luis, where I live, it's all over. It comes out of an adobe wall. It's called Osha del Campo, and the root is humongous. You have to take an axe to it to break it up and scrub it and to dry it or to use it for whatever. The root that's being protected is skinny, and I probably have a little sample, but it's more potent. The big root doesn't have the same energy that the little skinny one does. That's why it has to be protected. But that's something everybody had in their house. And I tincture it, but I donate it over at my church, and they can give a donation there. But just 2 or 3 little drops helps the situation. You can put it on a wound. You could put it in boiling water and drink it. You could gargle with it. But you can also use the seed, the leaves in cooking. And there are ways to preserve that. But that one of the ones they use the most, and mint. Poleo is peppermint, and it likes the higher elevation. And we do have a lot. And also yerba buena, which means good herb. That's a spearmint. So we have a couple of spearmints that are constantly used in the valley. Some of the other herbs, we have many, and they are listed. I have done it in Spanish and English, and then just a little slurp of what it might be for. But there are good books out there. I have written a book, but my book has to do with my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. So I write little stories, and I use the herbs. Like, I have one, the tan mouse. And the tan mouse was a naughty little mouse because he was gray, and later he became tan because of the story. And I tend to want to do something creative for the children, so I fill it with catnip, nevada. And nevada catnip was what we went to sleep with. It was a tea that helped when our children were sick, and they were given catnip tea or nevada. And then we would do a little magic. We would recite a little poem with them that I didn't write. Sana, sana, colita de rana, ya si sanarás mañana. And it's like, son, get well with the tail of a frog. If you don't get better today, you'll get better tomorrow. So we put a little fun into our healing with our children. They get a boo-boo, you bless it. You know, it was all the way that people did things, simple, humble, and not expensive. There was no chemicals from Walmart or whatever. If you had a headache, you might get vinegar and sliced potatoes, peeled potatoes, and on your forehead it take away the headache. And I used to suffer neck aches because I was always out in the yard doing stuff. And I remember my grandmother putting it around my neck. So simple things of nature. And the plants give us so many things. Enjoyment. You're out here looking at what's left before spring. We not only get enjoyment, we get healing. We get goodies out of it, like jelly. We do the wild things, and I make a lot of this for my church. We have one we call capulin, or choke cherry, and it makes a wonderful jelly or syrup. We also boil the dry ones, like in birthing tea. It was a good burn because it gives them strength and it calms the husband while they're waiting. So that's still used. And manzanilla, too, was one of the other herbs. But we also have rose hips, which we call the little button, champe. Champe jelly, champe syrup, champe tea. What I like to do is dry it, mix it with hierbabuena and other herbs, and I put it away in a jar for winter colds. It's a very good soothing too. It has vitamin C, excellent. But it's very popular in the valley. People find out we have choke cherries, they run over to what we call the Mercy Shop, which is Sangre Cristo Parish, and I donate it to them because it gives me something to do and keeps me moving. And my children love it. And when they come, they run upstairs where I have a box, my grandkids, and they find the jellies I make, all kinds of jellies. But those are very popular. So the plants give us food, medicine, enjoyment. And I tend to be a little creative, and so I like to make things. The last rose of summer becomes potpourri. And for those who don't know, the French word meaning literally to rot, but then you dry it. And it becomes something fragrant and beautiful, and you still see summer in the leaves. Oh, there's my daisy, or whatever. But also because I like to work with children, and I have taught little cowboys and little cowgirls and all kind of kids. And I had a group over at the Fort Garland Museum that come every year, and I taught them about herbs. But they wanted something to take home to mother. So because I recycle like grandma, I can't throw anything away. My children come and dump everything. But I got some little seashells. And then I put a magnet on it. I got some little bottle tops that were hanging around, put a magnet. And then I give them the herb they want that they learned about, like say it was the champe seed. And we also made necklaces. These are big rose hips. There's some little ones. And so not only nature is going to give you medicine, food, pleasure, and fun, but the children went home, and I even had two of the mothers write me that was beautiful. Her son came and said, oh, and that seed is for this, and that plant is for this. And they took a little memento with them. So children like to be around plants. They can be taught to be respectful of plants, to not yank plants. I have seen children do that, and it's a no-no because the seed, we even have seed banks now to protect our seeds. We better be careful with our seeds. I can imagine Grandma had a lot of little packets, but those hollyhocks are all over my yard. And I think we brought some seed, but I can't remember. But so not only do the seeds give us pleasure, they give us medicine, important medicine right now. And it's being protected in many places because we found that a lot of chemicals are causing allergies, causing different situations. So it's very good, and especially since I'm elderly, I'm very careful of any chemical thing I put in my body. My body's not used to that. You know, I lived the old life forever. In California, you have every kind of plant. We lived in San Francisco, and also I lived in Japan for 2 years. And so I got to know that people use the plants all over the world in different ways. We must learn, respect, and keep it going. Get a little plant and get it going in a corner of your yard. Grow your own food, your own medicine. It's good to get out and move around. So I try to encourage children. I teach a religious class, and part of what I do, I give them a little rosemary. I have a rosemary bush this big in my adobe greenhouse, and recycle. And so I'm forever cutting the plants to give rosemary, because rosemary is a good healer. It's cleansing. It's good for the brain. I take a cup of tea every day, and I learned that from an old English manual. So respect every kind of thing that goes in the world. Everybody has something. But the important thing is don't do trial and error. You must always check with your doctor when you're taking herbs, because they are very good at monitoring that now. And when I was younger, after I graduated from high school, I couldn't afford college, but I wanted to be a doctor and go to third world countries, save the world. And instead, I was offered a licensed vocational nurse. And I did volunteer in almost every hospital in San Francisco. But later, I was given the option, and I took the class and became a licensed vocational nurse, which I practiced for many years till I moved to the Valley. Later, I worked with behavioral people with the Middle Center, and I worked for 7 years with them. So I got an idea. Our patients seem to be zonked all the time, and we start doing alternative things. We had a day treatment program, and part of what we did, we took them out for walks. And we would pick quelites. Quelites is like gold for us because we were raised on it. It's wild spinach. Some people call it a weed, but it's good eating. And we would pick them, and my grandmother would lay a sheet upstairs, and we'd go pick and wash them and dry them for the winter, and they'd be stored in big flour sacks for the winter. I actually wrote a story that's in a book that was written in San Luis. And the quelite, or the lamb's quarters, is very high in vitamin C, and it's good eating. And of course, we always put our chili in there to spice it up, and it's wonderful with a bowl of beans. So these things were very common, very important. And we survived, having that good way of eating. And there were dandelion greens. Dandelions grew everywhere. They actually had one of the varieties called chicory that they would grind up and make coffee. It was the coffee of the day before we got it from Brazil or anything. We also had the greens that were very welcome in the summer. I remember Grandma having a bowl with icy water, which we pumped out of the backyard. We had a pump. And they would float in there, the dandelion greens, along with little bits of lettuce. We didn't have all those dressings you make. We had vinegar and oil. Good stuff. Maybe throw a great little garlic in there, and we had good eating. So all those things sort of come back to me, and I think my children have been raised on that. They love that kind of salads. And so we ate the wild things. The rose hips not only became jelly, it became a lot of other things. Little pleasure, a little art. There were just so many ways to use it. And here's this little mouse. It's from one of my stories, the tan mouse. And he was tan because he got in trouble. But I tried to teach with little animals and plant children's behavior. This little mouse got into the pantry and he knocked over the canela, the cinnamon, and then he knocked over the flour. And the mother came down and found a little tan mouse. So that's part of my story, because often, and they're filled with catnip. I decided to make something for my kitty, and I grew Nevada, which is catnip, and which is also a good sedative for children, the tea. And but when they're not sleeping well, they give them that tea. But the little mouse, it reacts different on the mouse, they get crazy. They start flipping. And I think I invented the mouse because my fear of mice. I'm not although I write about them very nicely, I'm not fond of mice. I'm very much afraid. Unfortunately, in San Francisco, the ships come in. I remember the rats, and I guess maybe that's my fear of a poor little mouse, So I tried to be good by making him a hero. But he's full of catnip. I'm a person that loves to feed animals. I have a little cat that came to my house. I call him Rusty. And I read in the paper one day there was a cat missing from Blanca. And this cat, I call him the $300 mouse or cat, because they advertised that he was lost and there was a $300 reward. But it turned out it's not him. He has a microchip, but he's become my cat. So every day he's there, and I have a pleasure with him. But one of the things I like to do is feed the birds. And I cannot waste anything. I'm terrible. I find a way to use it again. But my neighbor had so many apples, and they just let them lay on the ground. And I went and gathered them. And there's a lot of wild horses out going out of San Luis. And I take the apples to the horses, and then I sliced them up and made things for the birds. Because it's cute, and it smells good. And I have actually made wreaths with them. where I add a little more cinnamon and cloves, and it makes a beautiful wreath, and you could put something else in it. But I volunteer at our church shop, and the rose hips are growing there. So sometimes they get too big, and I actually made one of our prayer thing a rosary, which another filmer wanted, and to do that, and it was a religious thing. But I find a use for everything. It I don't know if that's a good thing, but anyway, because I enjoy the herbs, every herb fascinates me. And it seems like every day, even at my age, I'm still learning. There are hundreds of books out there. And one of the people that, if you wanted to study the things of the valley, is Michael Moore. He's not the politician. He's the one that wrote 4 different areas. He started in Costilla County, New Mexico, and Arizona. And he does walks that I heard are very costly. But anyway, you learn by going, and I for years have been doing a little trek of that I take people to certain areas that are not private, and we learn on each level because things grow on different levels. And you will only find them unless one escaped and survived. But if I looked out the window here at our room, it was full of sagebrush. But there are good and not so good sage, okay? We have culinary sage, which you could grow, different varieties, which is good. But here in the valley, we learned from the natives. As we came in, the Spanish came in, the Europeans. We learned from the native what already was happening, and it was good. They had the chamizo or sages were used for many things. There's one we call chamizo hediondo. It's a stinky one. It's very fragrant. And on a rainy day, it'll clear your sinuses. I guarantee it. And but we also use it for bathing. Some precautions have to be used with some herbs because they contain things that would not be good with your medication. And it's a good idea always to tell your doctor, I'm taking chamomile, I'm doing this for tea, that kind of thing. They need to know about that. But most of the ones there's probably some basic ones that we really are pretty good, but because some people have allergies, our systems are not as strong as they used to be, so allergies kick in a lot, and you don't want that. But you don't have to be, you could grow things in your own garden, in your own window, like Grandma did. Her window was a garden. And I remember geraniums. They don't grow here, but somehow somebody gave her a seed, no doubt. And I remember the red geranium sort of flowing down out of the window. And I have geraniums there too. But a friend of mine recently gave me a little piece of pink. So now I have the pink one. And in the old days, you visited your family or your friend, and they saw something growing in your window, and they would say, "Dame un retoño. Give me a little piece so I can start the plant." We shared. We shared the plant, and that's why they're still here. And then they got runaway seed, like my poem, and they can get in somebody else's yard. So we have to monitor what comes into yard, like nettle. But that is good medicine, orteguilla. And the orteguilla, I have actually used it in herbal bath that I make, but it has to be dried and ground up. But it's a good skin healer mixed with other things. But in the spring, it was common as the men went still looking for wood, because the people burn wood, they would find the nettle growing, usually intertwined with the rose hips. So you got to be careful because it's stinging nettle. It's not going to kill you, but it's sure going to help sting you. You know, that's going to happen. But they would gather it fresh. And the way I do, I put on gloves. I go like a scientist with a big bag. I clip it carefully, put it in my bag so the seed will go down. You don't want that seed all over your yard. But it's stingy and it looks like a mint, but they would boil it and it was a spring tonic, a really good spring tonic. Gave you energy, cleaned your intestines. It was very good. So we still gather that. And in Costilla County in the mountains there, it sort of intertwines with the rose hip. And I remember one of the county workers said, "Oh, Mrs. Vigil, I got stung with what's the one, the poison oak." I said, "There's no poison oak here." "Yes, there is. Look." I said, "Oh, no, you got stung with the nettle. Here." And I gave him some calendula cream to put on it. So we have to be careful. It looks like something, but identification, and that's why a walk is good. You see it in different stages. You see it when it dies, okay? So there's a two side to knowing the plant. And I always gather things, and I like to give these as gifts. There's the old lime that I was eating. But you can do very fragrant things with natural stuff. Never use chemicals. There are a lot of natural oils you can get. Lavender, for instance, is very healing. It's good for the senses. It helps you relax. And it was often used with babies, you know. And I remember one night, one of the county nurses there called. She had heard her mother talk about a certain herb. Okay, about a certain herb, and the baby had a fever, and they couldn't get the fever down. And they said, "Do you have any poleo?" Poleo is one of the mints. I said, "Yeah." I go upstairs to my remade pharmacy and I have boxes and jars and carefully packaged stuff that I save. "Oh, there's the poleo." So I send it over. They made a tea to put in the water to bathe. The baby's fever went down. So if the county nurse, I think, picked up this, that was a good thing, but it was safe. You know, it wasn't ingested that way. But again, the only thing I tell you, look at what you're picking. Use gloves if necessary. It's always good to have the ready-made gloves we have now, and just to be safe. And then watch where you drop your seed. You don't want to start a county of things that are not wanted in their yard. They fly around and they get in adobe. They'll climb out of your ceiling. So seed is to be honored. Seed is to be precious. Just think about if tomorrow we didn't have seed to plant. There's not going to be no lettuce, no beans, no potatoes. Think about it. Honor your seed. Watch your seed. But plant them safe in little places. So I leave you with that message, and just to let you know, there are many things we make out of that, and we learn to be safe with protection and read. Forget this. pick up the book and read and remind yourself over and over that that plant is okay. Okay? And I don't knock the new system, but I love to refer back to books because that's where the other stuff came from. And it's a good reminder. So, have a good time at the Seedville and go and plant. Oh, we do have some potpourri, and my daughter Victoria and Suzanne. Suzanne is a registered nurse that worked at Denver General for years. She's retired. And Vicky was very well known, and Vicky the Taos, she does fabulous art. And she has some cards. She made storyteller for me. The grandmother with all the kids, beautiful. And we have native in our family. I had a great grandmother that was born San Ildefonso Reservation out of Santa Fe. And so I think the native in me has come out along with all my Hispanic. So it's a blessing. It's a blessing to know. It's a blessing to share. And I thank you for listening to this lady here.